municipal government, in the city civil service, and in state and federal government positions. On November 10, 1898, an armed mob of whites led by some of Wilmington's most prominent citizens removed from office the city's duly elected biracial government in what historians consider the only successful coup d'etat in the history of the United States. Between 1894 and 1896, a Republican populist coalition took control of the state government and several city governments, in part by appealing to African Americans. Democrats initiated a counterattack in 1898, appealing to white voters' racial fears, and portraying Wilmington, then the state's largest city, as an example of the dangers of the Negro rule. The Democratic press depicted African Americans males as a threat to Southern womanhood, a charge denied by Alexander's record, the state's only black newspaper. To say this would happen if you let Negroes in office and let them rule the government. A charge denied by Alexander Manley's record, the state's only daily black newspaper. The day following the elections of November 8th, a white mob gathered at the courthouse and adopted the white man's Declaration of Independence. It demanded that the city return to an all-white administration, that the record cease publication, and that Alex Manley be banished. White leaders presented the Declaration of Prominence to African Americans, demanding a response within 12 hours. Mail rather than hand delivered, their reply arrived too late. On the morning of November 10th, a mob of armed whites burned the record to the ground, then turned its fury and guns at the African American population. At least 10 blacks died in the violence, scores more according to African American oral tradition. Hundreds of men, women, and children fled to surrounding swamps and forests in search of safety. Whites expelled from the city both black and white political and business leaders who were opposed to democratic rule and white supremacy. The federal government ignored African Americans' appeals for protection, signaling Democrats throughout the South that it would no longer protect blacks from the violence. Wilmington's 1898 racial violence was no accident. It began as a successful statewide Democratic campaign to regain control of the state government, disenfranchise African Americans, and create a system of legal segregation which persisted into the second half of the 20th century. This monument serves as a symbol of Wilmington's commitment to an inclusive society, a tribute to all who, over the years, have struggled to reverse the tragic consequences of the 1898 racial violence, and a memorial to those African Americans killed in that violence.
So as you can see, we're actually in downtown Wilmington, North Carolina. We're at these monuments dedicated towards the 1898 Wilmington Race Massacre, in which so many African Americans that had political power and held office here in Wilmington, North Carolina, were actually massacred. They were overthrown by a mob of white residents that were looking to take back political control in this area. It was so devastating that they ended up killing a lot of blacks in the black community. It was a huge massacre. So we're just highlighting this today, giving you guys a peek of the monument and an overbrief of the history, and just knowing that this still exists, in terms of, the history being preserved. So yeah, it's just a little information in regards to it.
These 6 bronze pedals stand as a memorial to those who suffered as a result of the violence of November 1898. These paddles refer symbolically to water, an important element in the spiritual belief system. of people from the African continent. They believe water to be the medium for moving from this life to the next. Water is also incorporated into a diversity of beliefs throughout the world to symbolize purification, renewal, rebirth, forgiveness, cleansingness, and wholeness. For this city that grew beside the waters of the Cape Fear, these paddles symbolize a type of passage as well. The memorial stands here on the banks of this river as a testimonial to a community that 100 years later strove to acknowledge injustice of the past and work to move forward together as a society of greater justice and inclusiveness for all of its citizens. We believe these slender yet strong paddles, though rooted in the soil of past memories, rise skyward to the future in a spirit of reconciliation and hope. Members of the 1898 Foundation, November 8, 2008. Water is a spiritual element that's used for purification and clarity and cleansing. So since this is a highly spiritual land where people got massacred, I just said a prayer for peace of the land and cleansing of the land. And I said a prayer for the lives that were lost on this land. It was my offering of thanks.
David Walker. His appeal, influential 1829 pamphlet denounced slavery. A free black, he grew up in Wilmington, moved to Boston by 1825.
So we're here at the site of the 1898 Wilmington racial massacre. And typically in places of extreme pain and anguish, kindred spirits and like-minded souls will come and acknowledge the presence of the land. A mass of people have created an altar here to give to the people and the lost souls here. I thought it was important to highlight this, to give to the altar as well, but to give peace to the people of the land here too.
Can I do it?
Yeah. Touch the tree. Go touch the tree.
Touch it like this.
I'm gonna touch it too.
Everybody touch it.
Look at Daddy, he about to touch it. I'm about to touch it. Look.
See, it's just a little touch on the tree. You gotta give them water.
Good job.
Yeah.
Alright guys. So when we were going over, I was just getting this eerie feeling about this swamp, like somebody was hiding or running. And then when we read about the massacre, they were saying this is where people ran to hide when the massacre was happening.
Wow. So this was like a black neighborhood or just something over here?
It wasn't necessarily this swamp was always here, but when the riots occurred, this is where they ran over here to hide from the rioters.
It's amazing how energy works.